Reifen Puipetschig brennt der Feier und in Stubis Eis und der Rebbe lernt kleine Kinderlich dem Aleph Beis und der Rebbe lernt kleine Kinderlich dem Aleph Beis. Sog Kinderlich gedenk Shetayere, was ihr lernt dort. Sag noch amol und hake noch amol, kommet alle vor. Sag noch amol und hake noch amol, kommet alle vor.
At the fireplace, a little fire burns, and in the room it's warm. The rabbi teaches the little children the Aleph Bet. See, children dear, remember, dears, what you are learning here. Say once again, and then once again, comets, Aleph, O. And then came Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. A series of coordinated attacks against Jews throughout Nazi Germany and parts of Austria on the 9th and 10th of November 1938. The attacks left the streets covered with broken glass from the windows of Jewish-owned stores, buildings and synagogues. At least 91 Jews were killed in the attacks, and 30,000 were arrested, incarcerated in concentration camps. Jewish homes, hospitals and schools were ransacked. Over 1,000 synagogues were burned. Over 7,000 Jewish businesses destroyed or damaged. It was the beginning of the end for the Jews in Europe.
כשהלב בוכה, רק אלוקים שומע, הכאב עולה מתוך הנשמה. אדם נופל לפני שהוא שוקע, בתפילה קטנה חותכת הדממה. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. כשהלב בוכה, הזמן עומד מלכת. האדם רואה את כל חייו פתאום. אל הלא נודע, הוא לא רוצה ללכת. לאלוקיו קורא על סף תהום. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, אתה כל יכול. נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, עכשיו אני לבד. חזק אותי אלוקיי, עשה שלא אפחד. הכאב גדול ויהיה לאן לברוח, כי לא נותר בי כוח.
I can see in my mind's eye, at this very moment, the imposing image of my deeply respected grandfather, Rabbi Tzvi Meltzer, handsome and dignified. I was blessed to have been his beloved grandson. He was my guide and mentor. He was the one who taught me Torah. I see him with his white beard and dark eyebrows, enveloped in his talis, among the congregation davening in the shul. In the town where I was born, Vishniev, in Belarus. I wrapped myself in the folds of his talis, and with much emotion listened to his clear and lovely voice. It is still ringing in my ears as he recited the Kol Nidre prayer of Yom Kippur. In the hours and the moments when, according to our belief, the Creator of the world determines who to life and who to death. I still remember him at the train station from which I, an 11-year-old, started on my journey from my village to Eretz Yisrael. I remember his poignant embrace. I remember the last words and the order that I heard from his mouth. My boy, always remain a Jew. The train whistled and started on its way. I continued watching my grandfather until he disappeared from sight. That was the last time I saw him. When the Nazis came to Vishniev, they ordered all the members of the community to congregate in the shul. My grandfather marched in front, together with his family, wrapped in the same talis in which I enveloped myself as a child. The doors were locked from the outside, and the wooden structure was torched. And the only remains of the whole community were embers. There were no survivors.
As the smoke of war cleared in 1945, as the Russians entered Auschwitz and the British Bergen-Belsen, slowly people began to understand the enormity of what had happened. A third of world Jewry had gone up in flames. Entire worlds, the bustling Jewish townships of Eastern Europe, the Talmudic academies, the courts of the Jewish mystics, the Yiddish-speaking masses, the urban Jews of Austria and Germany, the Jews of Poland, who had lived among their Gentile neighbours for 800 years, the Sephardi Jews of Greece, who had lived there for 24 centuries, the legendary synagogues and houses of study, all were erased. 1.5 million children had been murdered, not just because of their faith or their parents' faith, but because one of their grandparents had been a Jew. When the destruction, the Shoah, was over, a pillar of cloud marked the place where Europe's Jews had once been, and a silence that consumed all words. There are many silences in Judaism. There is a silence of grief, Vayidom Aharon, Aaron's silence when his sons died. There is a silence of trauma, when there are no words to express what we feel. Then there is the silence of the victims, the words, the prayers they did not live to say. There is the silence of death. And then there is the silence of memory, as we remember those we have lost. Nefesh achat ka'olam maleh. One life is like a universe. Tonight we remember 6 million lost universes, a whole murdered generation. If we were to remain silent for 1 minute for each of the victims of the Shoah, we would have to remain silent for 11.5 years. Let us now remember and be silent.
I stand before you as the President of the State of Israel, the home of the Jewish people. And with me come Holocaust survivors and representatives of the next generation. In memory of and in honor of the 6 million Jews who turned to ashes, I pray.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ולמד דברה כרעותי, וימליך מלכותי, ויצמח פורקני, ויקרב משיחי, בחיוכון וביומייכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה, מברך לעולם ולעלמי עולמה, עלמיה. תפילה זו מסתיימת במילים שהיו לסמל במדינת ישראל לחלום בעולם היהודי. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
Then there was the strength of those who refused to give in to the evil and did whatever they could to save Jews from the slaughter. There were many righteous among the nations, as well as fellow Jews, who showed fortitude and resolve, which saved thousands. One of those was Sir Nicholas Winton, who died aged 101. Here is his remarkable story.
Nicholas Winton, then a 29-year-old clerk, visited Prague Czechoslovakia in late 1938 at the invitation of his friend from the British Embassy. He spent only a couple of months assisting in refugee camps before he realized the danger posed by the imminent Nazi invasion. Winton immediately recognized the danger and made every effort possible to get the children to safety. After the war, Nicholas Winton kept his wartime rescue efforts and achievements secret. His deeds went unrecognized for over half a century and would have stayed so if it wasn't for his late wife, who found a scrapbook in the attic with all the children's photos, a complete list of names, a few letters from parents of the children to Winton, and other documents. Nicholas Winton was first faced with the children he rescued in a television show. He was given no indication of what to expect.
All the letters. But back here is the list of all the children. This is Vera Diamant, now Vera Gissing. We did find her name on his list. Vera Gissing is with us here tonight. Hello, Vera. And I should tell you that you are actually sitting next to Nicholas Winton. Hello.
And it was just so wonderful, so terribly, terribly touching.
Is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please?
One of the remarkable stories of the Shoah is what happened after liberation, as the survivors began to attempt to rebuild their shattered lives. We are inspired by these survivors, their strength and courage to engage and embrace life. They are heroes for their ability to respond to the hatred they received with a love for humanity and to build families and futures for our people. They give us hope for the future.
Someday we will all be together. Someday we'll be sheltered and warm. Never will we have to express any fear. Our scars and our wounds will disappear. Avraham and Yitzchak will be there to greet us. ירושלים בעזרת השם. Someday we'll all be together.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Could I ask what that tattoo is on your arm? It's just that it's a bit boring. It's a line of numbers.
Well, I was about your age when I got it, and I keep it as a reminder.
Oh, a reminder of happier days?
No. Of a time when the world went mad.
So you keep it to remind yourself?
No, my darling. To remind you.
שלא ייגמר לעולם החול והים רישרוש של המים ברק השמיים תפילת האדם החול והים רישוש של המים ברק השמיים תפילת האדם. Oh Lord my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the seas, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of man, the sand and the seas, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of man.
If only they could see us now, praying in a place where they tried to destroy us, wearing the flags that symbolize our strength and unity, standing together, treasuring a religion that made them want to burn us, gas us, torture us, murder us, knowing that the place that was meant to break us apart is bringing us together, making us stronger. If only they could see us now, walking out of the gas chambers alive, being near the crematoria without smelling the death of our own people, crying tears, not of pain, but of triumph, pride, passion, and love. remembering, praying for those who lost their lives but not their faith. What if they could see us now? They would ask how to destroy us. The answer is, you cannot destroy us. We are indestructible. Because although we stand as many, our hearts stand as one. That beautiful poem was written by Dana Lee when she was 17 years old, having been to Poland with Tribe. Over the years, I've had the honor of leading several trips to Poland, of both sixth formers and adults from the Stanmore community. We go for 5 days. We see the horrors of Majdanek and Auschwitz firsthand, but we also sing and dance when we visit the grave of Noam Elimelech of Lezhensk and celebrate Shabbat in Krakow with Jews from across the world, with the realization that despite all we have endured, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people lives. Once, we were dancing on Friday night in the Isaac Shul in Krakow, hundreds of us from Israel, Argentina, America and the UK, and I danced with a survivor whose grandson was part of the American group. He cried while we danced. After all we went through, after all we have endured, look around you. You will give me hope for the future. Tonight, we remembered what happens when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. We remember and pay tribute to the survivors who bore witness to what happened without hate or desire for revenge, but simply to remember the victims so that robbed of their lives, they would not be robbed also of their deaths, and to teach us that the road that begins with hate ends, if unopposed, at the gates of hell. We remember and give thanks for the righteous among the nations who save lives, often at the risk of their own, teaching us how, in the darkest night, we can light a candle of hope. When we speak about Am Yisrael Chai, the eternity of our people, there is no greater proof of that, post-Holocaust, than the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors living lives as proud Jews in the State of Israel. A few years ago, a remarkable event occurred in Israel, bringing the heroes of the past together with their families for a beautiful and memorable recording.
Shena yod nisa It was the most haunting of all prophetic visions. The prophet Ezekiel saw a valley of dry bones, a heap of skeletons. God asked him, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel replied, "God, you alone know." Then the bones came together and grew flesh and skin, and began to breathe and live again. Then God said, "Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say our bones are dried up. Of Ovda tikvatenu, our hope is lost. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what God says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel." It was this passage that Naftali Herz Imber was alluding to in 1877, when he wrote in the song that became Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, the phrase, Od lo, Ovda tikvatenu, our hope is not yet lost. Little could he have known that 70 years later, 1/3 of the Jewish people would have become, in Auschwitz and Treblinka and Bergen-Belsen, a valley of dry bones. Who could have been blamed for saying, our bones are dried up, our hope is lost? And yet, a mere 3 years after standing eyeball to eyeball with the angel of death, the Jewish people, by proclaiming the state of Israel, made a momentous affirmation of life, as if it had heard across the centuries the echo of God's words to Ezekiel, Veheveti etchem el admat Yisrael, I will bring you back to the land of Israel. And a day will one day come when the story of Israel in modern times will speak not just to Jews, but to all who believe in the power of the human spirit as it reaches out to God, as an everlasting symbol of the victory of life over death, hope over despair.
The day I reached Belsen concentration camp, the 5th day of liberation, was a Friday, the day before the Jewish Sabbath. Something like half the surviving prisoners at Belsen were Jews, and the Jewish chaplain to the British Second Army, the Reverend L.H. Hardman, held an eve of the Sabbath service in the open air in the midst of the camp. It was the first Jewish service that many of the men and women present had taken part in for 6 years. It was probably the first Jewish service held on German soil in absolute security and without fear for a decade. Around us lay the corpses that there had not been time to clear away, even after 5 days. 40,000 or more had been cleared, but there were still 1,000 or 2,000 around. And people were still lying down and dying in broad daylight in front of our eyes. This was the background to this open-air Jewish service. During the service, the few hundred people gathered together were sobbing openly, with joy at their liberation, and with sorrow at the memory of their parents and brothers and sisters that had been taken from them and gassed and burned. These people knew they were being recorded. They wanted the world to hear their voice. They made a tremendous effort, which quite exhausted them. Listen. Yisrael Chai, the children of Israel still liveth.
Tonight, by this act of remembering, we've taken a journey from grief to hope. We cannot bring the dead back to life, but if we live for what they lived for and what they died for, we can make their memory live on in us. We can't change the past, but we can and must change the future, showing that Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people, lives. Nowhere is that affirmation of life more vivid than in Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel, where the Jewish people has been reborn. The place whose national anthem is Hatikva, which means the hope. A few moments ago, we heard Hatikva sung by voices from the past, from Bergen-Belsen, as it was liberated 76 years ago. Let us end with all of us here adding our voice to theirs, so their hope and ours may meet and take wing towards a Jewish future without war, without hate, and without fear. And let us join together next Tuesday night as we remember those who fell in defense of our homeland on Yom HaZikaron, and then as we collectively celebrate with Bnei Akiva the momentous 73rd anniversary of the State of Israel with Yom HaTzmaut for the Jewish state, our home. Please now stand to sing the national anthem of the State of Israel, the anthem of the Jewish people, our hope, Hatikva.
Kol od balevav ani ema nefesh Yehudi homiya ulfatem Mizrach kadima Ein Lezion Sophia see